Hi, friends. I had the great honor and privilege recently to participate in a concert celebrating the music of Ornette Coleman. I'm assuming that anyone even slightly interested in my channel will probably know about Ornette. If you don't, there's a ton of information out there on him and his contribution to creative music. I would highly recommend you check him out in some detail. But I wanted to spend a little time sharing my reflections of that experience and in hopes that it can inspire some music making on your end. So this was the first time I really got to first time in a long time that I got to dig deeply into somebody's music. We played a lot of Ornette tunes, a couple dozen tunes, not a couple dozen, maybe, I don't know, a bunch of Ornette tunes across his career. And it was a really fascinating experience. And Ornette, being the true innovator that he was, went through this common process that any true innovator in any discipline really faces in the three stages of truth. Those being, the first stage being ridicule. Literally, his music was ridiculed early on, almost considered laughable by some. And that's one of the phases of truth. The next phase being violent opposition. I mean, his ideas really threatened the established ways of thinking. He basically said, I'm totally paraphrasing here, that he's known for sort of dropping the harmonic content as we knew it in the tradition, the jazz tradition, and said, well, we don't really need those harmonic structures. We can build harmony as a result of melody. And he even coined the term harmolodics, which, again, there's plenty of information out there on his contributions and what that means. So again, he certainly faced the phase two of the stages of truth. And then the third finally being self-evident, right? The truth of idea becomes obvious, that it's accepted as a given. Right now we accept Ornette's music as a real body of work that has opened up new doors, new ways of thinking, and it's basically become part of the tradition. So he certainly faced that, just like many of the great innovators have. So I wanted to spend a little time today talking about the art of melody, and especially how Ornette's music in particular has contributed to our development of melody. Now, I'm sure anyone interested in improvisation, composition, and the history and tradition, you'll find tons of stuff about harmony, tons of stuff about rhythm across all sorts of traditions, but very little really about melody. It seems to be this elusive, magical thing of how to create a great melody, and Ornette certainly could do that. So there's a few things that really stood out to me from this experience of diving deeply into his music and getting to perform it. And I just wanted to share a few of those briefly. And one of those is his use of triads. So Ornette's music is loaded with triads. He certainly understood this really basic building block. It's kind of fundamental. It's like when you're building a house, you got to have a good foundation, right? It's kind of like he clearly understood that and had a lot of use of triads to give really a strong harmonic outline of music without explicitly playing that harmony. So that's one. One great example of that is the tune Round Trip. Hopefully many of you know it. I'll overlay the chart and then I'll show you lots of triads, right? Many of his charts, a lot of triads throughout there. So a master of introducing movement and texture and color through the use of triads. And that one example you'll see starts with with an E flat major triad, then a B flat major triad, then a D major. So juxtaposing very close chromaticism from E flat, B flat, and then of course to D, brightening up that sound. So this juxtaposition of triads is really prevalent in his music. Another one that really stuck out to me was his use of motifs, these melodic fragments that he then manipulates to build really this story in this really fascinating way to tie things together. And a great example of that is this fabulous tune called All of My Life on a record called Science Fiction. This sound, and then he plays these fragments, these scalar line, then moving like a response to that question. And then this kind of a thing. Yeah. Where he goes up a fifth at the end of this phrase, and then down a minor sixth, down a whole step. Then he kind of shadows that, but changes the intervals. Up a fourth, down a major sixth, down a half step, right? So it's always close to the blues, right? He always got this sort of blue notes in there. So really fascinating study to look at his music. The third thing that really stood out to me was his ability to introduce contrast really effectively. So we've got these really strong foundation through the use of triads, this really interesting way to phrase by having these motifs that are transformed through different intervallic structures, but then he introduces just contrast. And a great example of all of these things is a tune called Mothers of the Veil. I'm not going to play through it, but you can check it out. It's super cool, especially the way the rhythm section sets up this sort of kind of, fairly up-tempo sort of texture, but then they play this loose phrasing over the top with lots of triads, lots of different things. In particular, what I wanted to call out was, again, the use of the blues and this contrast. So I'll overlay the chart, and I'm going to play particularly the fourth system down, begins on the note F natural, and he plays this phrase, and then the blues, and then this. Super cool, right? So the things like groupings. I didn't write this chart, so I'm not quite sure how accurate it is, but another thing that's really fascinating about Ornette's music is his use of gestures. It's like these groups of quintuplets. Like, is it really a quintuplet? Maybe, maybe not. It's kind of loose, right? Or this septuplet, use of 7/1. So these kinds of things, and again, that use of the blues, he plays this D diminished triad with the blue note in there, like an F minor, and then this where the real contrast is rhythmically is here, very hip. But then he comes back to this phrase, but he doesn't resolve it quite to that C natural until a little bit later. Earlier he played this. Later he plays and then goes to the C. So just a few takeaways that I had from this, again, being his use of triads, his use of motivic development, and contrast. These three things really stood out to me as just masterful, his adoption of these techniques. So I like to go out just playing a short improvisation to honor Ornette, and hope that it will inspire you to make your own melodies. Thank you, Ornette.